Let's be brutally honest right now. That's a big question.
I'm looking for someone who doesn't want to go to base camp, but they want to go to the very top.
Whether it's here, India, New York.
Civilization was born at happy hour.
That's what wins. That's what stands out. That's what people are interested in. That's what I want to know. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 124 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. When the topic of specialty coffee comes up in Brisbane, there's absolutely one name that's mentioned, and that's Wolff. Penny and her partner Peter have three distinct retail brands: Dandelion Driftwood, Queen of Pops, and Big Bad Wolff. They also have a roastery, Wolff Coffee Roasters, of which Penny is the CEO, and now operating at a non-executive capacity. She's even more involved in the community to support some great causes she's passionate about. Penny brings a creative touch to the craft, and you'll hear has a strong background in education, which sheds a unique perspective on the industry. She's very spiritual, and we'll get into that, and has a mantra to act with intention, integrity, and persistence. The Wolff YouTube channel, Wolff College of Coffee, has over 80,000 subscribers, so plenty of people learning about coffee over there. Do check it out if it's up your alley. It's a great interview today, and I hope you enjoy as much as I did. Hello, and welcome to the show, Penny.
Oh, good morning, James. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Penny, thank you very much for joining me on the program today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'm really excited to hear because we've caught up a couple of times before this particular interview, and I really appreciate you joining me. There's a lot that's been going on with your business over the years, and I'm sure it's been, for lack of a better word, turbulent with some of the things that are going on. You've got a retail venue at the airport as well, and I'm interested to know a little bit about how COVID has impacted on you. I don't want to linger on that, but I'm really excited to hear your insights and things that you've learned over the years in specialty coffee. Certainly, Wolff Coffee Roasters is a brand that many Brisbaneites know, and even Australia-wide are familiar with the Wolff brand. So I'm interested in your journey and what's been happening in more recent times too. So thank you very much. As you do know, the first question I like to ask on the show, though, is a crazy hospitality story or exceptional hospitality experience. I know that you've prepared for this one. I'm excited to know what your story is. Which one would you like to take, and which one you're going to go ahead with today?
Yeah, thanks, James. I am going to tell a crazy hospitality story, actually, and it does relate to our first cafe that we opened here in Brisbane. So it was back in 2009 and 2010, we actually officially opened our doors. And in this particular cafe, which was quite cutting edge in that it was a suburban cafe, a very small suburban cafe. And we set up the interior of the coffee shop with a brew bar and an espresso bar. And on the brew bar, we offered a whole range of brew styles, so 9 brew styles, I think, in total. And it was really the first introduction to filter coffee in Brisbane. And there was quite a lot of skepticism around the idea of why would anyone want to have a brewed coffee? Filter coffee it's not our jam. And we pushed through because for us it was all about being able to showcase awesome coffee, the baristas being able to talk through flavour notes and really share amazing stories about where the beans have come through and the flavours in the cup. Anyway, we obviously did get pretty heavily reviewed early on when we opened. And on a particular occasion, we had a food journalist come in who didn't let us obviously know that they were a food journalist and they were writing a review on us, which is all quite exciting, I suppose, when it's happening at the time. But anyway, she came in with a friend, this particular food journalist, and they dined, and she didn't actually drink coffee, but her friend she was with had a filter coffee, which was fine. And the barista took a lot of care, obviously attention, explaining the Chemex brew that they'd had and the flavours and vice versa. And anyway, when the review came out in the paper, it was quite scathing, to say the least, and made it seem like the experience wasn't very enjoyable. And one of the key lines that was written in the review was, "How dare we be offered a filter coffee and not even be offered milk or sugar? And how ridiculous. Cafes being set up with the idea that people are going to want to buy filter coffee." Anyway, the craziness that came out of this was the coffee community in Brisbane came together and literally everybody was outraged that a critic would come in and complain about not being able to have coffee with milk or sugar. And the whole point of the filter coffee was to understand the articulate flavours that sat within the brew. And because of this craziness and this outrage, what it actually did was it sent this wave of amazing publicity into our business. So we had all these other reviewers then coming in and writing completely opposite to what this food journalist had explained. So within a matter of a month, we became so heavily reviewed that the publicity was an awesome thing for us. So the craziness is the publicity can turn into what seems a negative into an amazing positive.
Interesting, though, in that having that support of the technical end, the people who really know the industry, actually the industry, they had your back, and that's what really swung it back in your favor. So it's really interesting there thinking that you must have focused on that highly technical aspect and the forefront of what was happening in coffee to then have the support of the industry who got behind you in that experience. It would be more challenging for a business that hadn't been doing that. Maybe they had been doing those things, but they hadn't looked after their brand within the industry. They mightn't have been impacted so well. I think it also says a few things about, or a lot about, your brand within the industry, particularly at that time as well. And it was at Dandelion Driftwood, was that?
Yeah, correct.
I went to that cafe, I think about then. I remember it was brand new and it was excellent. It was, I remember going into Dandelion Driftwood and very much enjoyed myself. It was an excellent venue, and I know it's changed a bit over the years, and I'd love to hear about even what's happened with that cafe. Just give us a quick rundown on what's happened with that successful venue over the years.
Yeah, so Dandelion Driftwood really is a remarkable business for us with so much soul and energy. And we've pivoted and changed within the brand in a few different ways. Our initial concept, which was in Gurla Road in Hendra, the original store, we traded that up until a couple of years ago, and then we sold that business as a going concern, but with the branding removed. And the reason that we did that was just up the road, literally 500 metres up the road, we set up Wolff Coffee Roasters in a 1,000 square metre warehouse. So on the same strip, we literally then had two locations, and it just made sense that we moved one on and all the people could gather at the bigger venue at the other end of the street. So having retained the brand for Dandelion and Driftwood, we continued to do a few things with that brand in the interim. People could still purchase whole beans, and we did pop-ups here and there. But then the opportunity arose for us to go to the Brisbane International Terminal, which was fantastic. And we did that last year, worked towards opening for October. It was a little delayed, opened in November at the International Airport. And then obviously now with COVID, we've closed the doors temporarily and hope to reopen next year sometime. And the Brisbane Airport Corporation has been really helpful in keeping us up to date on how we might be able to do that towards the end of next year.
So it's quite large changes within that particular business itself over the years, and it has been a long period of time. You said they're about 2009 through to present, which is over a decade. But even for one brand to still be around for a retail venue over 10 years is quite good, with a lot of businesses opening and closing within a couple of years.
Yeah, totally. And I think that the Dandelion and Driftwood had a lot of meaning to people, and when people think of specialty coffee, I think in Brisbane a lot would mention Dandelion and Driftwood. One of the key things for us in 2011, which also came out of this bad review from the food journalist that I referred to earlier, was a group of reviewers then gathered together and did a panel assessment of the best coffee in Brisbane. And this was something that journalists used to do back in the day, and they would visit several cafes and pop in and out and then determine around the table what coffee they thought was the best. So in 2011, when we received the Best Coffee in Brisbane award, that's when that business really skyrocketed. I think we only had 7 staff on when we first started, and within a couple of weeks we were 25 staff. We had lines out the door. We had just an excess amount of people wanting to visit the venue. So yeah, that really held us in good stead for years to come. And yeah, we continued to just groom our offer and ensure that what we did, we kept innovating and changing and doing new things. And that kept the customers happy.
And from there, you stepped up deeper into the supply chain, roasting coffee. But before we really explore that a little bit more, I'd like to address a question that I like to bring up a little bit earlier, and I've gotten a bit carried away exploring some of those concepts a bit more with you, Penny. I'd love to know why you do what you do. So what is it that really sits behind everything that you do? And of course, you have a very important business partner as well who's been part of that journey too. So tell us about even how that dynamic has adjusted over the years as well, and why you do what you do, and then how you've brought that together to create the things that you have. And then This is a big question. And then moving up into roasting coffee. What really drove those things? So fundamentally, why do you do what you do?
Yeah, it's a really important question. I'll start initially with myself. So up front, I always like to make it pretty clear that my entrepreneurial journey has been in and out of coffee for 30 years, whereas Peter's journey, my husband and business partner, has been in coffee for pretty much his whole working career. So we come from very different backgrounds in that Pete literally lives and breathes coffee. It's his world, whereas my background is quite different. One of the consistents for myself across my career has been my thirst for knowledge and learning and continuing to seek further education. So that's certainly one of the areas where I like to make an impact in being able to enact positive change and giving to others. This is something that I value dearly. And you can see these values are also coming through now within all of our brands that we work together in. Yeah, look, I think you don't have to be in a privileged position to be able to give to others. You can do it through kindness, volunteering, through different resources, but being able to think beyond oneself for the betterment of our community is certainly something that keeps me going and certainly drives me and also drives Peter. And I think with that at the top of the business looking in, it certainly then becomes part of the cultural glue of what we do.
What is it that is behind that drives you to want to do that? Is it that that's the legacy you want to leave? What is it about that ultimately that is behind what inspires you to provide that? Because there are a lot of operators out there who are successful and they're building their businesses through very different whys as well. So what is it that made you so passionate about this in particular?
Yeah, look, I've always had it. There's not one particular story where I think, oh my gosh, that changed my life. I just have always valued being able to give to others. I would suggest that my upbringing, having grown up on a farm and having parents that modeled to me what healthy relationships look like, how to run a business, how to move beyond disappointments, and really taught me just good values.
What sort of values are they?
Just being able to help others and think beyond yourself and be hardworking and want to make an impact and make social impact and change. Yeah, when it's modeled to you growing up, it just becomes the norm. I always say to people that your greatness is not what you have in life, but it is what you give to others. Being in the position where we have businesses that generate profit allows us to be able to give back. And that's a unique position to be in, and certainly something that I don't take for granted, that's for sure.
You said that those are the sorts of values that you're taught growing up and you don't question them. Have you ever questioned some of those things along the way?
Oh, look, I think definitely as you get older and wiser, you come across situations and you make calls on things and you reflect on it afterwards and think and hope, okay, yep, was that the right decision at the time? Would I have done anything differently? That's certainly having a growth mindset and being able to reflect makes you a better person and you grow from those mistakes that you have made, for sure. Certainly made plenty in my time, and that uncomfortableness, that real uncomfortable feeling of, ooh, should I do this? Shouldn't I? Taking risks, doing things differently. That is part of success. I truly believe that getting uncomfortable certainly makes for a better person.
And that's comfort with discomfort, or comfortable being in that zone of discomfort or uncomfortable space is something that people talk about to grow as well. And it sounds like something that you're also reflecting there. What is it about doing those particular things, or so maybe some examples of things that you have done noticeably differently that have driven success in each of your businesses?
Yeah, I would probably... The first thing that has sprung to mind is at Wolff Coffee Roasters. We've done a few different things with our farmers, which has really made an impact, not just for our team, but to our community as well. So one of the things we do is each year, not obviously at the moment due to COVID, but each year we bring across several coffee farmers into Wolff Coffee Roasters and we house them in what we call a farmer in residence arrangement. So we provide them, the farmer, with the learning opportunity to see how their coffee is actually being used and understand how the consumer is enjoying their beverage. And there's a lot of coffee roasters that spend a lot of time visiting origin and spending time at origin, which is also beneficial because you're learning how farmers are working the land and creating amazing crops. But by bringing the farmer into our context, it allows us to educate the market and educate the consumer, which ultimately, if the consumer understands transparency and understands more about coffee, it's better for the entire industry because then customers will seek out quality or seek out coffee that's been sourced in the correct ways. So yeah, that creating coffee connections that we do with our farmers is certainly one of the great joys at Wolff Coffee Roasters. And for Peter in particular, he dearly values the relationships that he has with his farmers and the direct trade that he has in that space.
Yeah, that's excellent because a lot of coffee education is one way for the baristas, as you mentioned, they're going to the farms, not just baristas, roasters, going from retail, going back to the agricultural property and the land that the bean's grown on, and for cuppings at that sort of state and looking at different lots and all sorts of crazy stuff that retail just doesn't see otherwise. But that's an excellent way to, as you said, educate the consumer and then educate the other direction as well. You're actually increasing the knowledge of the farmer around how it's delivered in that retail sense by your particular brand as well, because they don't get to see it otherwise. So that's very good. Thanks for that example, Penny.
Absolutely. And look, I can use an example of our Kenyan coffee farmer that has come across twice actually now and spent time at Wolff. And he dearly values the time at the roastery with our team because he learns and sees things, even business related, on how things are being done that he can then take back and implement with his team. So one of the pushbacks that he was finding on the farm was this resistance to want to produce or process coffee that created a love, like an amazing fruit connotation to it, because it went against what they thought they should be doing. So then to come and spend time in our roasting house and listen and hear customers talk about the amazing fruit flavors in this coffee just confirmed that he was on the right track, if that makes sense.
Penny, I mentioned there before I was going to ask a little bit more about why you moved up the supply chain to get into roasting. So I would like to open that a little bit more, and then how that is connected with your why of delivering that value and helping the community to build and really adding that sort of value that you want to that person. When I say that person, that archetype of person, that consumer or that individual, it could be anyone from what I'm hearing from you. It could be any sort of person that you're looking to add that value through the legacy that you want to leave. What really drove you to move up the supply chain?
Oh, look, Peter Wolff, my husband, has been roasting coffee for over 35 years, and his journey in coffee has allowed him to do so many amazing things. With regards to Pete's background and having owned and run two amazing coffee brands in Australia, Pete's first coffee roasting business he co-founded was Veneziano Coffee Roasters. And having started that business, he certainly understood all realms of roasting and what could be achieved in growing a business. When he sold out of that in 2008, and then begun Wolff Coffee Roasters, which has been going for the same amount of time really as Dandelion and Driftwood. They've been operating side by side. He has been able to take all of his learnings from his first coffee brand, which he co-founded, into then creating Wolff Coffee Roasters as well, and pivot and do things differently than how he had done it with Veneziano. Yeah, I would say Pete is pretty much the driving force in the roasting space. So Wolff Coffee Roasters, when it was set up, was really just about producing quality coffee beans and selling to the local market. Alongside that, Pete also was selling Probat coffee roasters. So we have the rights to sell Probats in Australia and New Zealand. So he was doing that also. And for him, he really understands the craft of roasting, having been doing it for so long and being a master roaster. He wants to advocate and share his knowledge and be able to really just forge forward the whole culture of coffee in Australia, which is really what he has done. Yeah, I would say the why is very much driven through Pete on the roasting side. And my background, as I had mentioned, was previously in teaching, and I spent a lot of time teaching in the classroom and then as an academic at Queensland University of Technology. And I took my learnings from my career and then applied it within Wolff Coffee Roasters, and hence the Wolff College of Coffee was born, which was a curriculum written to teach people how to roast coffee. And that began also around the same time as Wolff Coffee Roasters. No one really at that point was doing roasting courses. We were getting guest students from local here in Australia, but also overseas, coming in to learn how to roast, doing a week-long roasting course with Pete. And really, when we look back at the alumni of the people that have been through Peter's roasting course, they really are people that have now started their own amazing coffee roasting businesses and were trained through Pete's understandings and knowledge. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable thing to look back on now, having been in the industry for Peter for over 35 years, to be able to make a very long list of all of his alumni, not just around Australia, but many overseas that have been trained through him. So it certainly is a legacy.
What sort of prompted you to do these things, and who have you used as models for your own business growth?
Yeah, look, there wasn't actually at the time anybody that was offering roasting courses, not in Brisbane. And look, there were training facilities through SCAA and others overseas that had begun. But what differentiated what we tried to do was the practicality of the roasting course. So you would work side by side next to Pete on the roaster across a week and learn recipes and understand how to source beans and the real basics. If you could imagine doing an apprenticeship in roasting, this was what this course was. And I just saw the gap in the market, and I was very intrigued with Pete's ability to be able to communicate and share not just his knowledge, but do it in a funny, eclectic, unique way. He's quite the entertainer to listen to. So I said to Pete, you should be doing courses. Like, this is part of it. If you can imagine the bigger picture of coffee, it just made sense that people were seeking knowledge, and he was up for the challenge. So we developed the notes, and yeah, off he went. The rest is history. So there wasn't really a particular model that we based it off. We just went for it. And and you would now know also, James, there are so many people now offering roasting courses. So it certainly was the way forward. But one of the key successes for our businesses has been to recognise a small niche in that market where there is a need, and then just go for it. And being the first cab off the rank, it was a great opportunity for us. And there's been several opportunities like that across the last 10, 12 years where we've just acted quite quickly and put things in place so that we could offer innovation in the coffee world, I suppose.
You're doing caffeinated ice cream as well. Tell us about what that's about, and then a little bit more about Studio Espresso.
Yeah, we had obviously Dandelion Driftwood chugging along, and Wolff Coffee Roasters and Wolff College of Coffee. And we saw the shift, this is going back years ago now, with an interest in cold brewed coffee and cold coffee. So we had already introduced cold brew and nitro coffee within the business and had started doing that. And then we had noticed that in Brazil and through Central America that there was this, even in the United States, there was a bit of a surge of interest in frozen popsicles. And it got us thinking, what if we actually looked at creating a product? It was a caffeinated product. It was equivalent to having a coffee, but it was frozen on a stick. So what most people would see here in Brisbane, because the weather is quite warm, your sales in coffee during winter is fantastic. And then in summer, the coffee sales would reduce because people didn't want to have a hot beverage. So we saw cold brew take off, nitro coffee, and then we thought, what about a caffeinated ice cream? So we set about creating formulas. We did a trip to Brazil and spent some time there with a popsicle specialist that only produced iced confectionery, and learnt a little bit about the craft of ice cream. We brought those ideas back. We then played around with the idea of having a double ristretto in each popsicle and what that would taste like, started freezing things, and we were like, okay, I think we're doing okay here, but I think we need to seek some help with specialists in the ice cream field. So we were lucky enough to get a grant where we had food technologists working with us in the ice confectionery space, who were then able to refine for us the flavors to literally replicate the in-cup experience, but frozen on a stick. So we created like a latte, a cappuccino. We then moved into hot chocolate, a chai latte, and did them as a frozen beverage. And yeah, that was a great innovative piece for us because people were intrigued to try it. It's an exciting product, and to be able to get that real kick from an ice cream, which you wouldn't normally get. You're enjoying ice cream, but also getting a caffeine fix at the same time. So yeah, that was Queen of Pops. And we then moved into doing a caffeinated soft serve, and we created that also. And yeah, it just became a little bit known for our expertise in coffee in frozen products. So yeah, it was certainly fun.
Penny, you mentioned there about replicating the experience of drinking coffee through an ice cream. Just to unpack that a little bit, what do you mean by the experience was replicated? Because it sounds to me like having an ice cream and having coffee are two totally different experiences. So what do you mean about that experience of drinking a coffee as an ice cream?
Yeah, so what we were really interested in doing was portraying that in-cup experience. So if a customer came into one of our cafes and ordered, for example, a cappuccino or a latte, how could we replicate that flavour, the flavour profile of that cup, but transform that into a frozen product, being an ice cream on a stick? We did many market research tastings with this product, and what we found was the customer wanted a replication of the hot beverage, but as a cold ice cream. And every time they tasted a product that really made them feel like, oh yeah, this is exactly like having a mocha, or it's exactly like having my double ristretto flat white, yeah, they'd be like, yeah, this is the one, this is amazing, I love this flavour. The other key part was it had a real handcrafted quality to it. So at that time, that the buzzword was handcrafted, and what we felt was by having a double ristretto in each ice cream, the consumer felt that it was a handcrafted product. It definitely was, let me tell you. It took many hours doing all the extractions for these ice creams, and that was the fascination with the product, because customers would say, what do you mean it's got a double ristretto in it? And you'd say, yes, every ice cream has a double ristretto in it. So they understood
the work.
Yeah, the work that had gone into it. So that you couldn't have done this 10, 15 years ago, because the market, the coffee consumer market, would not have even been able to articulate that's what they wanted. But this is how quickly the market has shifted and innovated and changed, that we're seeing the progression of what the customers are asking for, and we're going with it.
Penny, you're also very involved in a wide range of other activities outside of roasting as well. So tell us a little bit more about your philanthropic endeavours and some of the other things that you've done in recent times as well. I know you've been part of Dancing CEOs and some other things that you, for example, are involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm very proud to be an active participant in that philanthropic space, not just within Queensland, but more far-reaching now. So yeah, last year I was approached by Women's Legal Service to be a Dancing CEO, which is a great opportunity to be involved with other like-minded individuals. And yeah, obviously a little bit nerve-wracking to do that performance, but it was well worth it. And together with the help of my team and extensive community work, we raised over $52,000 for Women's Legal Service. And at that point, working alongside when I was doing that initiative for Dancing CEOs, I was actually doing some further study at QUT in the leadership through coaching and mentoring space. And what we noticed is that there were many parallels in what I had put myself out there and was doing that the team actually was very receptive to and enjoyed, that there was this other element going on to the business. So we really set about making part of our focus at Wolff Coffee Roasters that our social responsibility was at the forefront of everything that we were doing. So I'll just break that down a little bit, because sometimes when you talk about social responsibility, I'm not sure that everyone's clear on what that entails. But for us, the social responsibility really took on not just philanthropic work, but environmental and economic and human rights responsibilities, and taking all that very seriously within the business and making that part of our culture and how we wanted to do things. So ever since then, we've been on a journey in so many different ways, doing some amazing philanthropic work. So we do this through many causes. So we've done quite a lot of work in the arts, in education, through rural farmers, not just locally here with rural aid, but we also project that further out. And we do a lot of work with our farmers, our coffee farmers, and they do philanthropic projects with us. For example, if we are purchasing beans from a particular farmer in a particular country like Costa Rica or in Kenya, we would have a discussion with the farmer about, is there something in particular in the community that we could be doing to help your people? So, for example, in Kenya, a lot of the mums and dads that do the cherry picking at the farm, their children attend a school that's nearby. So we established at Makwa Primary School, which is next door to this coffee farm that we're purchasing beans from, that they actually didn't have water tanks to have clean water for their students at the school. So we did the funding to be able to provide water tanks for this school. And then in Costa Rica, the example would be we provided a backpack with resources for each student that attended their neighbouring school, so that when when they started the beginning of the school year, they had the resources for themselves for the year ahead. So yeah, we're looking at ways that enables us to think beyond what we do to make a community impact. And it is such a rewarding notion to be able to do this in a business. And I just think the way forward through COVID and the years ahead is the essence of social responsibility will come to the forefront. We're just really passionate about it.
Yes, and what fantastic work you are doing, Penny. Well done, and thank you, and congratulations, and all those things that you're working towards. And thank you for sharing those as well. I'd love to ask you, Penny, what is it that you're learning about or exploring at the moment? So what is it that this can be personal, professional, what's something that you're interested in that you're exploring right now?
Yeah, look, I've got a very interesting background. I'm sure you've read up on it, James, but my first degree at university was in drama. So I did quite a lot of acting work and worked with local theatre companies in that space, and then did my postgraduate study at university to become a teacher and did education, specifically focusing on the early years, which has really held me in such great stead because the core premise of early childhood education is being able to use your observational skills for the betterment of children. And those observational skills I now use daily, every day of my life. And so then I went on and I did my master's in education, and then last year completed my business course in leadership through coaching and mentoring. So that has led me into this amazing coaching and mentoring space. So yeah, at the moment, actually last week, I just completed the Australian Institute of Company Directors course, so company directors course, to be able to understand further governance in the business space. Yeah, so on a professional side, I'm going down that road at the moment, really trying to understand the helicopter view of business and broader governance issues. And then on a personal level, I also studied at the start of this year feng shui. So I've completed a feng shui course, which is, you're probably going, my goodness, what on earth?
It'll affect your venue design for sure, and I'm sure your house will look lovely.
Yeah, look, there's so many aspects to feng shui, and a bit of a secret to the success of our business, I truly believe. We have always had a feng shui consultant come in before we've opened a new business and got professional advice on these areas, and it has always held us in good stead.
That's interesting. Can you elaborate just a little bit more on that for those who aren't familiar, just to explain what that's all about?
Yeah, so feng shui, there's many schools in feng shui. There's form school, compass school, flying stars, and all the different schools within feng shui focus on different things. But the key premise really to feng shui is understanding how the energy enters into your business and how it all falls, if that makes sense. There are particular things each year, if you're looking into the flying stars of feng shui, that you would know that the north would have an auspicious star that could really benefit your business, or there may be some areas in that year where you should steer clear of doing renovations in that space. So having an understanding of, a higher understanding of the flying stars helps you to really understand things about your business a little bit more.
Is having a more Eastern influence on your philosophy impacted you more generally in business and life, or is it something that you have? So you said you've had someone to come in and consult with your venues before you've opened. Is it something that's driven you more personally in recent times, or is this something that's impacted you for a long period?
Oh, yeah, definitely for a long period. Interestingly, on a spiritual level, Peter and I both engage quite heavily in that space, and we're very intrigued by a lot of learnings in the spiritual space. So the feng shui really is something that I've been playing around with. So every house I've lived in, I've feng shuied it. I change it every year around February for flying stars, and then every business we do exactly the same thing. And it's quite funny because the staff all know, oh, here comes Penny, she's doing her thing again with the feng shui in February with the changing of the flying stars. But I've only really started doing that in the business in the last few years, because before that I felt I was still learning, and we would engage consultants who their whole life journey has been in feng shui. But now that I've practiced it and also formally got some more education in that area, I feel a little bit more comfortable that my knowledge is good and I can put some principles in place. So it certainly will be something I'll do forevermore, that's for sure.
Thank you for sharing that as well, Penny. It's always interesting hearing different ways that people look at it. We could broaden that to a more palatable Western sort of way to describe that would be around venue design and I guess understanding the space that you're operating within as well. Interesting to hear another perspective on how that can be executed. Being an educator yourself, I'm interested to know if you've had people that you've learned from and taken advice from in recent times. And people use the term mentor, and we've discussed it at length in other episodes on the program. But what does mentorship actually look like to you? And have you had someone that you've worked with formally, informally, that you take advice from?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been very lucky to have several mentors across my career. Yeah, and one in particular was Cassandra Waddell. She was actually one of my lecturers when I was studying my education degree at QUT, and she really took me under her wing and helped me just grow as a person and understand philosophies and how to do things and how you'll be perceived. And yeah, she just helped me grow as a person. And sadly, she's now deceased, but I carry a lot of her with me, I think, on a daily basis. And the interesting thing there with Cassandra is when she passed away, she actually left me a print, and the print was of a dandelion in a very small little tin. And she used to call me her dandelion, that basically there's so many wishes and things that you could do in your future, then be that dandelion. So when we created the name Dandelion Driftwood, that was actually part of the reason that the name came about. So yeah, she's definitely been a huge mentor, but I can't leave out Peter, obviously, has been a huge mentor for me in the coffee space. And, you know, my knowledge has really become through him. He's been the one that has mentored me in the coffee stuff. So I definitely can't leave my trusty husband out of it. And yeah, I just think there's the opportunity for community and mentorship, and being able to coach others is such a great gift. Being able to have a conversation and enter into dialogue at that level can be life-changing for somebody, because you just don't know what's going on a lot of the time with people. So investing in people and your relationships with people, that certainly has a huge impact on not just your personal life, but business itself.
Penny, thank you very much for sharing those two there. And what an incredible story with Cassandra as well. So thank you for sharing that one too. What's your biggest challenge right now? Is your biggest challenge at the moment that you're dealing with personally, professionally, anything that really jumps out as something that you're struggling with, not COVID related, because that's everyone's big challenge right now, but a little bit more closer to things that you're dealing with that are specific to you?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't necessarily say struggling with, but something that's really at the forefront of my mind at the moment is our team and our culture of our business, and continuing to forge that forward. That really is what makes your business what it is. So looking after our people, but also I probably would say the customer's experience. I'm always very interested in the customer's experience. So one of the things in our business we try to do is everybody that works in the business, regardless of what your role is, if you're CFO, if you're QC or whatever, everybody has to spend time with our customer and spend time having conversations with our customer, because that feedback loop is what makes you who you are. Interestingly, I read somewhere that in a consumer study, 80% of CEOs believe what they're delivering is a great customer experience. But interestingly, only 8% of customers believe the same thing. So one of the key ways of ensuring that you can bridge this gap is relying on those conversations, those candid conversations with your customers, and really asking them, well, how was that? What did you enjoy about it? That level of candidness can bring a different depth to your understanding of what the customer is experiencing.
Absolutely. And there's a bit on that one. You said you make sure everyone has that customer engagement. Is that something that you prescribe as part of ongoing operations, that those people, everyone has to work in a retail venue? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. If you think about the front-facing part of the business being the retail side, if you're visiting Wolff Coffee Roasters, James, at the front, we have the espresso bar Big Bad Wolff, which is another retail shop, and everybody spends time in Big Bad Wolff. And if it's not behind the counter, it's talking to the customers out the front, or it's helping them decide on a course through the Wolff College of Coffee. So everybody within our business understands exactly what the customer's needs are. Because if we don't know what the customer's needs are, we can't deliver. And it always comes back to, you're setting up any business, the question you always need to be asking is, what is the problem that I'm solving for my customer? And if we don't know what that is, then you haven't got a business. That feedback is so important. And look, it's always interesting when you do the interviews with new staff, and particularly if it is an office role, there is usually a bit of interest around that when we raise it, that we value everybody spends time with our customers and engaging in conversations so we can all continue to learn about how we're going and what they actually want. And once they accept that's part of what we do and the culture of the business, it's actually quite a refreshing thing to offer your staff, that they can have that opportunity to not be at the desk and actually spend time with the customers. So we certainly walk around the roastery, Peter and I, with great respect when we see our staff talking with customers. It's dearly valued.
Fantastic. I have one last question for you today, Penny, and that is, who would you like to hear on the show?
Oh, I'd love to hear Oprah Winfrey.
Well, that'd be fantastic if I had Oprah on the show. People have said Elon Musk, they've said Oprah. I'd love to have The Rock. That'd be fantastic. There are all sorts of angles that we could take there. George Clooney had a tequila brand. The Rock's got tequila now. I think Jamie Foxx owns an avocado farm. I think that'd be fantastic. There's always a link to hospitality. I would love to have these people on.
I would also like to hear Peter Wolff on your podcast also.
Thank you very much for joining me on the program today, Penny. It's been a pleasure having you on. Very insightful, interesting conversation. And I wish you all the very best with everything that's going on at the moment, particularly with retail. And I know that it will be more challenging to get those farmers over to visit the retail spaces as well. So look, I hope everything is going well for you. And again, thank you. And it's absolutely appreciated, all the work that you do on the philanthropic side of your work. So thank you very much for joining me on the program today, Penny.
Thank you very much, James. And also thank you to you for all that you're doing to get the stories out into our community about awesome people that are working in hospitality and beyond. So thanks.
This program is hosted by James Henderson, with technical production by Jake Olver. Voiceovers were by Angus Brennan and Shim Phelan. Thanks to our distribution team, and a special thanks to you for tuning in every week. This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.